the opportunity to be with Sidi Hakim this morning, and he is our distinguished guest. We're very pleased to have him. We stayed up till 3 o'clock in the morning. so you have to thank us for being able to be here. Thank you for being able to be here with us. It gives me a great pleasure to introduce and welcome Sidi Hakim Archuletta in the Makan this morning. I'll speak a little bit about this, although I would not give his full. I wouldn't be fair if I say I talked about Sidi Hakim. Sidi Hakim has worked within the healing arts profession for over 40 years. His interest in medicine and natural as a child. His first formal studies were in the fine arts, film, theater, music, which he studies in the 60s in Berkeley, California. After becoming Muslim in 1969, he began the research and study of traditional Islamic medicine and homeopathy. In 1978, Hakim went to Pakistan at the invitation of Hakim Muhammad Saeed, and he studied there with various Hakims. And Hakim means traditional Islamic doctor. Returning to the Americas, he began teaching students privately at in California, a clinic for many years, and a midwifery center and college in New Mexico, and extensive programs for public education and Islam, on Islam for Muslims and others. Taught student study groups and workshops nationally and worldwide for professional and lay persons. He began extensive work as a counselor, consultant, and Hakim/homeopath in Abiquiu. I will have to learn this. This is my second time not being able to say it. In New Mexico, and by traveling nationally and internationally for many years. He has recently focused on the somatic approaches to trauma and related methods of therapy, with particular acting what he has learned to traditions and the newer research that supports that. From Northern New Mexico with his wife and son, has many students and clients worldwide. Extending the warmest welcome to Sidi Hakim, who will be giving a lecture titled, what was the title? Okay. What was the title? The title was, I wrote the titles and I forgot what it was. Yeah. From to bonding, right? And then to simply bonding.
I have to get that clear. So. Yeah.
Parenting to simply bonding. I think insight and perspective, did I say that? Maybe I did. Okay, maybe I did. So please help me, join me in welcoming Sidi Hakim. Thank you.
If I sit, is that all right? Sure. So stay sitting. Is that all right? Okay. So assalamu alaikum. I really so appreciated the warm welcome that I had from the time I arrived. I spoke about that yesterday. And the feeling that I've gotten from this place. Part of what I teach is recognition that place for us as Muslims has a reality that's very deep and very significant. Different places, and part of that's by our recognition of places that we honor. But the difference in places that affect our being, the quality of people and the quality of the character of the people in places. When I arrived, I'm going to tell the story again. Some of you were here last night, so you've heard this. But when I arrived, I happened to be in the midst of a group of must have been 15 or 20 people that apparently were just returning from being away from a long time. And it was like they were returning home to Lebanon, and they were so happy And they were saying, "Oh, well, you know," they were crying and laughing, and they were meeting their friends and guests, and I was sort of surrounded by them, and I felt like one of them. I felt like I was returning to the space. It was full of love and connection, very positive, strong aspect of community here. Although last night I really focused on this reality that we have to grasp, which is the inclination towards the lack of connection and community in the modern world. And the topic about parenting, this is anything deep. You know, the saying I mentioned yesterday, I'll repeat it for some of you who weren't here. I think, who just came today? Okay, so it's quite a few. But one of the about is one Shay. He said Noah was a flood of water, and the flood of our time is the flood of separation between us. And that separation is, from my point of view, as a Hakim, that is a traditional, from an Islamic point of view, traditional physician who looks at the principles of wisdom and hikmah in the world. What's natural for a human being, what's unnatural for a human being, this kind of basic wisdom of the nature of the self, the person, and Allah's creation, that disconnection, fragmentation, is so important, so it's dominant. We all know this, but I don't think we maybe know it, or the implication is deep. I mean, people say, well, stress in the modern world, and we talk about it, but I don't think we've understood completely the implications in terms of what that means for ourselves. And in this topic, in relation to what we're talking about today, the relationships that we have, which means family, have been shattered. Communities have been shattered. In the States, people, and they say, well, can you come to our community and give some talks? And I say, well, what is the community? And in America, it's people that if they're lucky, they come together at Juma, or in some cases, they don't see each other until the Eid. So it's, when we say community, if you have a friend, very often, even to get to the masjid, you have to drive for 15, 20, half an hour. So the separation in the modern world that we experience is so unnatural from a point of view of hikmah. Yesterday I mentioned that part of the principles of traditional wisdom medicine is often a term people use for hikmah. It's important to understand what is our nature, what is our fitrah, what is our basic nature as a human, and I point this out to a human animal. We are animals, we're human animals. But like all mammals, of which we are a part of, all mammals, we have very particular things in common with all mammals, and some of the new research that Dr. Hitler referred to that I've been working and studying has to do with understanding of how we heal trauma. And that we've learned a great deal in the modern period from the study of animals in nature. Other mammals, what do other mammals do? And what is the procedure, what's their design? And what do we have in common with them in terms of eating? So I spoke quite a bit about that last night. We can reiterate some of that at some point today and tomorrow, inshallah. But that recognition and then making use of what was designed in us. Allah's designed in us, what was designed in us as mammals, and how we have, we can be in harmony with that, we can make use of that, or we can do what the modern world is about to a great degree. We can offend it, and we can try to deny it, and we can separate from that. And if we do that, then we have all sorts of repercussions in terms of really illness, social chaos. Topic. I was looking at this, and I was having a conversation with my wife on the telephone, and I was looking at this topic for today about parenting. And I mean, as a disclaimer, I'll say I've had my difficulty with that. For starters, and it's not been easy. Through the years, I've tried to understand more, I've tried to learn more. One of the things I also want to add here is that many of the things that we have in the scientific realm, particularly about health, about diet, about the nervous system, about social realities, about parenting, children, and all this, these things are currently undergoing dramatic, not changes, but the new things. It's turning everything totally upside down. Do you understand when I say that? Does that ring a bell, people? Do you understand what I mean? The best example is in the world of nutrition.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, you know that was how many stay low fat, understanding now? Lots of fat. More fat you can eat better. The other thing that's coming into this revolution in understanding, there's whole little understandings of the nervous system and how it works and how it manages the stress. We have to learn how we, as human animals, manage the stress of the modern world. I mean, the world has changed dramatically. The fact that we can spend hours upon hours in 2 tons, I don't know what the weight of a car. What's the weight of a car? It's international, like 1 ton?
Yeah.
Something like, well, it's heavy. Traveling on highways and through traffic, inside these metal containers for hour upon hour upon hour, and one wrong move and speed, and we're, as my friend used to say, we're strawberry jam. That's a little factor, because so constantly awake and aware of all. We live in the time of just being here in Lebanon with the political situations and in the Middle East. It's not at all, well, that's huge. And if we manage to say, well, I'm doing okay, I've accepted the situation. Even so, the currents that run underneath, the conscious, unconscious, and this very kind of survival level of our being, are pretty important and dramatic in terms of how we manage or don't manage, and how it affects the very sort of more less deep in, how it affects the way we behave, the way we feel, the way we interact, and strategies, and how our states of being. One of the things I focus on in my work, one of the lectures I gave is called Kayfa Hal. What is your hal? What is your hal? And for us as Muslims, we use this term, Kayhal Hey, this one. We say, what is your state? That we understood this concept of the states, that we can go through and change the state. We've almost forgotten all the kind of the modern science of psychology, the brain. The brain has been given such great importance, and it was not the tradition, the Islamic tradition, or any model, whether it's from whatever place it comes from. We were seen as whole beings, and we were seen as people that had character that was either well developed, virtues, or illnesses of character, but of the whole being. My teacher, he taught very much. He said, well, we think of the heart as being something here, and the brain as being something here. But he said, this is only the headquarters. Here in the head, the headquarters of the brain, which goes right up to the fingertips. And yesterday I talked a lot about our capabilities and sensibility that can be developed to such a high degree. I gave some examples of how that can be done. But one of the basics and broad things I pointed out is that we know so much more about each other than we do from up here in the head, semantically, cognitively. We know from our bodies, we know from the chemistry that comes from our bodies, we know from the smell, we know from the tone of voice, we know from the subtle movements of the body, the subtle, very delicate, subtle movements of the face that changes with each shape. And when we say Kayfa Hal, we may say Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah. But I had a teacher who used to say to me, he said, when we said Kayfa Hal, we say Alhamdulillah. I said, no, how are you? How are you? do you feel terrible? You know, is it a really bad day? Alhamdulillah ala kulli hal, and then there's praise belongs for, you know, we can be thankful for all states. But also there's a hadith, and I can't give you the source, but even it's something like the Prophet said that we go through many states in a day. The believer will go through maybe one version I heard, and I can't give you the source of verification of this. He said we go through 2,000 states in a day, the believer, and the non-believer can stay in one state for 2,000 days. So whether that's an authentic hadith or not, if we look at understanding this principle of states, and if we really examine our own and others' experiences, we can see that in a healthy being in which the self and the nervous system and the biology and the hormonal function is well regulated and in a healthy state, that we do change all the time. Only Allah remains, only Allah steady and constant being alive. We have this constant movement from one realm to another and process right at this moment in our body, right at this moment in your body, my body, and our entire experience here. There's not 1,000 things taking place in terms of process. Probably not trillions or quadrillions, probably beyond number. And the evidence of that is the fact that right now, across the world, there's a scientist, probably at this moment, that has been studying, examining something, and he's saying, Subhanallah, aha, I discovered this thing. It's like these men, maybe a month ago, 2 months ago, you know, the Nobel Prize winners. You know who the people, there were 3 people that won Nobel Prizes, 3 people together, who they articulated and were able to describe the clock that exists in every cell of our body. That's connected to the alternation. In the Quran, Allah says in the Quran, in the alternation of day and night is a sign for the people of deep understanding. Deep understanding, not just reflection, but deep understanding. And that pattern, all mammals and all living creatures respond to that or don't respond to it. I'm still recovering from what they call jet lag. I tend to think of it not as jet lag, it's kind of an interesting term, but it's disharmony with the natural circadian rhythms. People know circadian rhythms is the day as the sun comes, day and night, that pattern of day and night. And so these ayahs in Quran I look to and I point out because it helps us begin to understand what it means to be this human animal and what it means to have this soul that was placed in us by God's command when in our mother's womb and has been in us. The soul is, and this thing I said yesterday, I'll say today is, you know, I suggest that we say, you know, to ourselves, we say, soul, how is it for you being in this body? My having gone to this place and done this, how is it for you driving in these cars at 85 miles an hour? How is it for you in the world in which you find yourself in this vehicle that Allah placed you in, and so forth? In other words, from a very long-term perspective, kind of perspective that gives somebody saying what this is about. We forget, we get caught up in the close-up. We get caught up in the details in the present. I mean, how many couples, I mean, I knew a couple, they were ready to divorce. And you know the thing that was bringing about the divorce? The way he chopped tomatoes. You know what I mean? It's like they didn't say, don't sweat the small stuff. Yeah, I mean, way beyond that. But that's also our nature. We get caught up and we forget and we lose perspective. Inshallah, ideally, our worship, our ibadah will be the thing that will bring us back to that. But even then, the modern world is so intense, and it's like a hurricane in reality. Things have changed so dramatically in this century, or the last century, from the, say, 1900s on. In the last 200 years, things are not at all like they were for the greatest period of our existence as human animals on Allah's creation. It's totally changed. And we say, yes, it was stressful life, yes. To be honest, if we could get perspective from my own point of view, if we get perspective, I think we should be able to say, it's totally crazy. It's not just out of balance, it's totally upside down. And it's upside down so much, and we get caught up so much in these details, that we're not able to see what's really important here. What's really important? What really brings us fulfillment? Is getting a new Maserati or a new whatever, a new a cell phone or iPhone, and is that important? What's really important? Is that important? How we dress and what other people think about us? And besides that, what do other people think about us? Because how close are we in community? How many people I know, they're very well connected, they're busy in the world, they have friends, they have support groups, and when I work with them personally, at some point they say, well, I feel totally alone. And I have no real close friends. And that's used to be when I first started this work in this practice, was primarily focused more on physical problems, medical problems, asthma, eczema, joint pains, et cetera, and I worked with that for many years. And then the kind of counseling came naturally with this sort of approach I took to medicine, which was holistic. Holistic in the sense that this medicine is the kind of medicine in which, like I said, I had a lecture that I gave once in the talk. It was entitled something like "How All Things Take Part in All Things, in all of every part of us, everything: our spiritual practice, our social practice, our pattern of eating, sleeping, our lifestyle, who we're with, who we're not with, what we do in our activity. All this takes place and plays a part in either the capabilities of wholeness, which is health. I mean, we use this term health. That's from the word whole in English. It means to be whole and integrated. Prophet ﷺ, he said, in the body there's an organ, and when that organ is sound, the body is sound. And what I say is about that, my commentary is that on one hand, that it indicates and points to the centrality and importance of the heart, which from a spiritual point of view, we talk about purification of the heart, purification of the heart. But it also points to the fact of the irrevocable connection between the heart and the body. It enhances the heart, and it enhances the attitude, the hal. So will the body be. One of the great scholars and thinkers, Imam Hakim Archuletta, he said, our aqidah, our belief, our creed, until we embody it, it's not really complete or real. Then it's not, because it's an idea still. It's a concept. It's abstracted when you embody it. And then we look to this example of Sister Aisha, who said the Prophet ﷺ was the Quran walking. Look at these things. Where in the Quran, when it says on that day of judgment, every part of our body will speak for us or against us. In the modern neurological belief and in some of the traditional Islamic understanding, everything we experience, we remember. We take in, we perceive, and all of that is recorded, if not in this cognitive part of our being, the semantic part, it's recorded in our bodies, in our cells, in our nervous system. And periodically, as you know, sometimes a memory comes forward. The biggest part of our memory, 90% of it is here in our body, and we call intrinsic or procedural memory, not cognitive, or what they call autobiographical, where we can tell our story. Well, this happened, that happened. So, this is kind of a reiteration of some of the things I touched on last night. And I could jump into this topic that it frightens me even to talk about it. You know, it's like, I thought this morning I woke up and I actually couldn't go back to sleep. What am I going to tell you? What is this? What is my solution? What have I found that's good advice and good counsel for parenting? There are some things I think I can say I believe are sound principles to hold to. As a Hakim, we learn basic principles, concepts, in terms of principle that we can apply. And one of the great things that someone said, I think it was said in the Hajj, he said, one of the earmarks, one of the marks of hikmah, real wisdom, is it doesn't go out of fashion. It doesn't change from year to year. It's not like, you know, a lot of the medical profession says, oh, don't do this, don't do that, and the next year, or 10 years later, you know, after we've been following it for 10 years, and some people that are all like say, oh, whoops, Eat lots of butter. Eat lots of meat fat. And don't eat so much carbohydrates. Even with whole grains, don't eat that. Eat something else. And so, some things I consider sound, but as a Hakim, what we want to do is look at what are these principles? What is our nature, our fitra? What is our nature as human animals? And one of the most important things that we have in common with all animals is to design Allah gave not only individual bodies that we know without having to read a book. We don't have to go to physiology or medical. We know it intrinsically. The example I always give is all mammals, when they're born, they first start breathing, they all know where to find the breast. That is mammal. A mammal is, that's one of the definitions of what a mammal is. Someone that suckles at the breast. But we also stopped suckling at the breast when the bottom came along. And so we didn't get the development of the nervous system that was needed by all mammals in that thing. So trauma is something that happens to us. Trauma means wound. And when we have a wound that's a cut in our arm or something, we don't have to cognitively say white blood cells do this, fluids do this. We don't have to sort of cells do this. We don't have to order it cognitively. It happens autonomically by the design that's in us from this vast processes and processes that are innumerable in our system. Am I going too fast? There's so much I want to say, and I'm still hesitating getting to this thing about parenting, because the things I want to say, I think most of the things I want to say, people are going to say, well, that's not possible. It's not possible for me. I have 12 children, and my oldest is 57 this year, and my youngest is 26. And I've seen, and I've gone through all sorts of possibilities with them. And I've seen also, I've studied this for years. Same thing, I studied marriage for years. I studied from teachers. I tried to learn in my own marriage, which was unsuccessful. But I really made a point of trying to learn about these things from people who had success. And then find teachers that seem to have sound foundational principles, hikmah, to apply. And I've seen, so in marriage, I do marriage counseling, and that's going to be an important part of what I'm talking about today. Parents, relationship is so crucial in terms of what the children are about. Happy parents, happy children. Well-regulated parents, well-regulated children. Well-boundaried adults, well-boundaried children. So the thing that disturbs me and that's difficult is back to my initial thesis, which I reiterate here, is the modern world, and I don't need to tell anyone this, you all agree, the modern world is intense. The changes that have taken place in my lifetime. Do you know about, I was born at the time when we didn't have computers, we didn't have television. We didn't have international airline travel. We didn't have ballpoint pens that you throw away. We didn't have plastic cups. It was a very different world. I could go on. There's a long list in books of the sacred. I don't know if anyone knows that book. But and he begins the introduction to that book. He says, I was born in 1940. That's when I was born. And he said, in 1940, we did not have any. He goes through this long list. And, reading it, you realize, oh my God, that was a very different world. I mean, today I was talking with Dr. Hibba's son, and I was recalling slide rules. Anyone know what a slide rule is? No one knows a slide rule? So that really dates me. On calculators, it was a physical rule, hundreds of calibrations. We'd slide the rule out and we'd get computations, math, dividing, and multiply, and other more complex algorithms and things like that. Trigonometry. It was a physical thing, like the abacus in Chinese. But now we've got these electronic things, and most of these young people go into it. So getting to the subject. it's a total disaster. And this is another lecture that I'm going to give about social media, but in this thing of, you know, parenting. So there's two things that are for all things that work well, that function well, and are healthy. We must first of all attend to ourselves. First of all, we must attend, and that means what we call tazkiyat nafs. The Quran refers to tazkiyat, the purification of the self. What do we mean by purification of the self? What does that mean? Does it mean we get rid of some way of looking at it? A lot of people say, you know, we have parasites and but one of the ways we can understand it, you know, the Prophet said, we know that at some point, historically, literal thing that happened, the Malaika, the angels came, they opened his chest, took his heart out, and washed it with snow. What an amazing image, nothing else, but even in terms of reality. That was that happened twice. Yes? So what are we purifying? The heart. Again, what did I say about that? The heart and the gut. It's the self, the whole self. We used to have a concept. We didn't separate from any traditional model. We didn't separate them. It wasn't up here, and it wasn't here alone. The heart is here, located in the chest, but it goes right out to our fingertips, right out to the pulse here, the heartbeat, and the blood that feeds it, and the quality and the contents in terms of chemistry of the blood also will affect the function of the whole body. So seeing ourselves as whole beings, holistic health, holistic medicine, you know, it's usually it's not very holistic, not really holistic. Back to this thing I'm saying, that lecture in which I said, all things take part in our well-being or our illness, our state of being. Okay? So the modern world, again, the people that are, you know, the young children nowadays, they're coming into a world in which the cell phone, you know, someone said, was the opposable phones made for this? You know, I don't think so. But that's become, I mean, I've met young people who, you know, they're at the table, the family dinner, family table, and there's conversation saying yes, and underneath, without even seeing it, they're talking to their friends. They're not talking with content, they're talking with code. When they talk with the cell phones, if anyone take a cell phone from your children, don't take it. Ask them to offer it to you. And even then, they'll hesitate. Because it's part of the dissociation they're making from their primary attachment figures. Can you hear what I'm saying there? Yes. Which is the most crucial part of the whole business. Sustaining. And part back to what I was saying. What is our nature as human animals, like all mammals, is a social pattern. I was mentioning yesterday that when I was at UC Berkeley in the film department, the most popular film that we made was being sold and we were working with was a documentary called Baboon Social Behavior. And in that movie, in that film, that documentary film, it was an examination by anthropologists about the incredibly complex social pattern that the baboons have. Depending on what age, what lineage they come from, they sit here, they don't sit there, all these very refined details of behavior. This is in our nature too, and we find it in what we call high context cultures. The Arab culture was traditionally high context culture. The Indian Pakistani culture were called high context cultures, and even the Native American cultures, and acceptable by the majority of the group. Hey, good thing. And for people who come from traditional cultures that are being that have been eroded and are certain states of disarray and turning into chaos and breaking down. On one hand, sometimes because people try to, enforce these traditional cultures to the pushback from the younger generation or the new generation for the modern world. And it's not like, I'm saying we have to step away or we have to criticize and find something other than the modern world. But on the other hand, we have to see what the implications are. Back to the thing I'm repeating. I said last night that I have a very close friend. She wrote a book, and I really appreciated the time I spent with her discussions. She wrote a book, and it's called "My Name Is Chalice, and I'm in Recovery from Western Civilization." And in that book, she talks about how the individual trauma and individual disorganization, dysregulation of the self and individuals collectively builds up to a global reality. And how then that, in turn, that global reality echoes back into the individual, and how then it becomes a kind of landslide of change that we can't necessarily even recognize or understand how out of balance things can become. And I gave the example last night, the metaphor of the frog. If we put a frog into cold water and heat it slowly, the frog will cook. If you put a frog into hot water, it will jump out. Change, year after year, generation after generation, means that I would suggest now, as someone who studies trauma, that not only do we have this individual trauma that comes from the entire collective trauma, but the collective trauma is in the same predicament, a kind of snowball effect. One person described this phenomenon as hypernormalization. Hypernormalization, anyone hear that? When you notice a documentary film? There's a documentary film by this man, Adam Curtis from the BBC. But the term itself says what I'm referring to, maybe more than even the film does. But the fact that overactive normalization, in other words, things have become normalized that were not traditionally even considered be unthinkable. If someone came 100 years ago, they'd probably faint, or I don't know what, they would be more than traumatized. It would be very difficult what they saw. My grandfather, I used to drive with him in his, this was in the 40s. I would ride with him in his old Model T Ford. And he would drive up the hill, but he would coast down the other side. Why should I have the engine running if I can coast down the hill and use it to go up the hill? But it would go, the fast speed might be 50 miles an hour or something. And I can't help but reflect on these things of how much we've accepted as a norm. And now, I don't want to offend people here or anything, depending on how people feel about these topics. The nature of the human animal and the nature of the human being, and understanding how things. So one of the things that come about when it does go wrong, and how we can just attribute it to other facts other than these hypernormalization that's taking place. She was telling me how in the state of New Jersey, they're about to enact a law which they don't until the child is a certain age, and then boy or girl. Now we know from science, we know the chromosomes. There's a choice in the chromosomal, the genome, the primary gene. There's a decision that's made to the X or Y chromosomes, and we do male or female. Now, I think that and all the things that may come about in terms of everything being turned upside down. Is it used to say and used to believe there was a classical discussion how that what's the current take on the nature or nurture discussion? Anybody? Sorry? So, I mean, basically it's saying we have a genome that we inherit from, it should be the best choice from the mother and father. It's automatically by biology takes place. And in that process, then the decision in genome of whether this is going to be a female or a male is made by the chromosomal decisions. But the newest research, and the research is not just in one place, and it's not by kind of alternative, it's by the really respected institutions. Right now, Stanford University in California, they're just finishing a study, immense study on it or thrown away, they find their way into the groundwater. So these things, and these things change animals. They change bacteria, but they change living things. So I'm entering into this arena that, you know, if we begin to look at, you know, I once had science years, and I remember once I started talking with the class, when the class was about, okay, and the students I had were very good students. They were very aware, very awake. It wasn't in public school. And I remember talking about it, and I remember a couple of the students, as we discussed this thing of the nature and what's going on in the world, they began to cry. I mean, I began to cry, I still do this. I have friends that have taught this concept and understanding what do we need to do about the pollution of the world and the disturbances that we human beings have messed up. Their thesis, their understandings, we don't deal with it. We cannot take it. One of the principles of trauma is overwhelm. When we say overwhelm, anything that we feel overwhelms us is, whenever anyone uses that word, overwhelm, because one of the ways that we experience having and if that wound is not healed, then the things we experience can overwhelm us because it gets in the way of our natural regulation and resilience that we need to manage what's going on. So my belief is that we have to become really, really, really strong. We have to purify ourselves really deeply. We have to become people of wisdom, people of really solid standing and understanding that we can stand in the face of these things that are happening, and we can begin to see solutions and move into action for change. It's a big thing. People say, well, not me. Yeah, yes, we all have this responsibility as human beings. In the traditional model of hikmah, we were placed by Allah in the center of His creation. Now that doesn't mean we're better than all these things in the periphery, but that means we have a particular balance. And the traditional understanding was that Allah's creation, and that enables it to be rahmat al-alamin. Worlds, and we can look at all of these things as worlds. The animal world, the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom, all this sort of thing. And so we're in the center of that, and we partake of all these things. And as a result, we have not a higher position, although it's a very strenuous responsibility that we've been given that we may or may not take on, which is care as khalifas. So I'm saying all this as a sort of prelude, as sort of background to understand the immensity of this issue that, like I said, I wish I could come to you and say, this is what you need to do for your children. And I'm holding back to you. Honestly. It's not an easy. There are basic things you can understand, but most of the things that are going to be useful and can really be things that we can believe will be beneficial are going to be difficult. It's going to take courage. The things that I've seen through the years, first of all, without being arrogant, we have to look at the fact that the mainstream, broad social reality of the world is way out of balance. It's way out of balance. It doesn't have harmony with our basic nature. Lies and offends our basic nature. And we suffer from it. How many people come to me and they say, oh, our marriage is a mess. This does not work. And I spend time with them and I do my analysis, stop alone as best I can. They're suffering from the world. They're suffering from the world. They didn't get, and what they don't get even now, in terms of social support and connection. That connection is one of the most important things that we need as part of our nature. Scientists, unfortunately, they do things that studies that are so clinical, it becomes kind of crazy in its clinical kind of abstraction. This thing they study, you know, the difference between breast milk. You know, I mean, there's these things I call diet. It's like, yeah, well, we knew that, but you know, but we do believe in some. People believe in science more than they do religion for the most part in the modern developed world. In spite of the fact that we as Muslims, you know, that one seems like I don't know, evidence-based proof, and that's kind of where in that, yes.
So, based on your experience with the consultations with couples and
Yes, yes.
What can you give us advice based on your?
Well, I've got, you know, do I have a session which I talk about more?
Well, this
I'm sorry?
This is the session where you talk about.
Oh, okay, because first of all, okay, let's go to that. I can say some basic things. One, realize that the world and its sickness, if you want to put it that way, like my friend said, the individual goes to the social, to the political, into the international, and then it comes back down on us. So in many cases, we don't realize. For example, a mother has got a lot, because in the States it used to be, I mean, there's so many things that used to take place that don't take place. In the Muslim world, it used to be that children not only had the mother to suckle from, but they had the other relatives. They would become mahram. They would, you know, they would become a part of the extended family by the virtue of taking milk from another mother, and in that milk gaining real genetic or epigenetic realities that makes them a member of the family. This is a wisdom, and that broadens the quality of the child, the capabilities, the knowledge, even the specific, from some people's belief, even the specific subjective knowledge can change from more than we realize, how much can contain in the cell and the chemistry in terms of information. So the couples have battles, but it's because maybe they don't have that 13-year-old girl that comes over and says, "Oh, can I hold your baby?" And they'll take the baby to that. This is the uncles or the grandparent that was present, and the neighbors that were present. When I was a teenager in Southern California, my father was from the Native American tradition. He would take me for walks in the street, and we walked down the street and he said, "Who lives in this house next to us? Have you ever seen them? No. Who are they?" No. Next time. He says, "Do you know any people in this house?" No. This was in the 50s and 60s. Already. At one point in time, the population in New York City, the average size of a household was 1.2 people. They were alone. And here you have something still, which is you have some connection with each other. You have people that can help you, that are in your house, you connect. And any people of any sort, besides this couple, that's one of the problems, is couples become insulated. And then, they don't have, see, the work I do, a lot of it, the work I do, people tell me, "Oh, Hakim, sometimes I'll just, you give me homeopathic remedies and you give me exercises, et cetera, et cetera." But the truth of the matter is sometimes I just like to talk to you because I feel better afterwards. And I know that's the case, and I know, so it makes me feel like I'm being a professional human being. That's what we've come to, because it used to be, a particular people, a particular person, the aunt, or the uncle, or the grandfather, or someone, and that gave us some kind of connection, important safety and sense of relaxation and our ability to process the stress that we experience in the world. But a spiritual connection that we can't even identify, not necessarily with remain in time, identify that there's something that comes from the hearts of people that we can call, some kind of spiritual insight. And we learn from each other and we recognize each other's states all the time. So So to answer this thing, am I talking about marriage in this case? Everybody's.
So back to therapy. You're running away.
Well, the first issue and the first reality. I mean, there's a book, and there's at least one book that's probably many. It's, I think, with titles like "Happy Parents, Happy Children," "Well-Balanced Parents, Well-Balanced Children." I mean, it's one of these things we have to face, but we can't face it with faulting ourselves. It's not like that's what I'm trying to say. Is we have to begin to ask: is in the midst of this chaos, in the midst of this insanity, in which we can be resilient, be strong enough, and healthy enough to stand in the face of it, to stand and to be firm and to be secure in ourselves in the face of it. And this takes wisdom. It takes courage. Women will understand it, and they will make this much more easy than we do, because we men it's impossible. We're our worst enemies. And what I say so often is we men need to learn from our wives and our children, and the women more than the men. And in the States, it's here. There's a malignant kind of masculinity that happens in most cultures eventually. And it has to do, basically, in terms of exchange and in terms of states of being, anytime we men raise our voice once, every time, any male, because of we have these different layers, we have this cognitive, semantic part, we have the emotional part of our being, and then we have this bottom, lower level, unconscious, very unconscious, deep in survival level. That survival level is so strong, our bodies can shut down. We can stop breathing, and our heart can stop for a half hour, and we can still be alive. The mammalian diving reflexes, from the mammalian level, the other level we can do, and then strategies take place between flight or freeze. But whatever happens in all of our exchanges as humans, animals, the animal nature, and anytime we males raise our voice once, higher pitch or deeper voice, I told you not to do it. My example I give, this is, I remember I had a client I was working with, and I don't want to say this because you have to understand, you have compassion and some patience with us men in terms of our refusal to even learn from them. Do you know what I'm saying? I get criticism. Sometimes I have women that say, you're not giving you men there too. But I put the onus for a good relationship on men. But in any case, one of the examples I was going to mention is I remember a woman I was working with, and I was talking to her on the phone, and she was having some difficulty, and she wanted to set up an appointment. And she was in a supermarket with Times, and she was on her cell phone, that she lost her keys, and she was terrified. I reflected on it, and I realized, oh my God, she's not terrified because she's not going to be able to start the car. Why is she terrified?
Yeah, that's right.
And that's the upside down of what it's meant to be. We have been responsible to care for women. That's one of the things the Prophet says in Lot. That's one of the whole points of the technology. Instead of it being like, that's your space, you have your privacy, you have the right to that privacy that we don't have. Instead of that, you stay there and you stay inside. Upside down, right? Not protected. Tyrannized. Now, I say, have patience with your husbands and your men, because we don't hear this very easily, because our traditions and all of our training has been that we're the man. So it's going to be hard to move into this place where we recognize that for us, our spiritual task is to be able to listen. And I'm telling you this, and there's only 3 men here, or 4 men here, but I do tell this to men. I say, every week, ask your wives on a scale of 1 to 10, how am I doing, honey? And if they say 3, 3. You should ask them why. Now, I know you would go to your husband and say, well, some of your husbands will say, yeah, that's interesting. And they'll take it. Most of them will say, oh, yeah, touchy feeling, whatever. Okay. What kind of modern hippie talk is this? I don't know. People react. Some people do it. I remember once I gave this lecture to a group of people, and then I went back to the same group in Canada several months later, and these two men said, can we talk to you after the session? And I said, sure. And they came up and both came. And we said, well, we just want to tell you, and we came to thank you because our entire lives have changed, not just our relationship, our life has changed. So it's not going to be easy to bring this about, but it can be done. Believe me, it can be done. So the way the parents are the model for the children. And the way we are individually, how to be with the other. This is like what I call the It's like, in case we don't realize the obvious. So,
it's not very obvious for everyone.
Say again?
It's not very obvious for everyone. This is why it's been parenting has been difficult because the parents always feel like have to. But
exactly.
they miss the point that it's just role model.
Well, that's because they've not learned
at least
the hikmas of this, which is when you push, it pushes back. It's really hard for parents, and I know, I've been in this circumstance with 12 children. I know that, we know they have to learn the boundaries. You can do this, but you can't do that. How do we bring that about? How do we demonstrate that? And there's a whole new, and I suggest you that any parents that want to understand this, that you look at these books like, what's it called? I forgot the title of the book. Sorry? I don't remember her name either. Genevieve. Happy Parenting. That I can give called Parenting from the Inside Out by Jan Siegel. You know this book? Yeah, okay. And this whole new movement of what they call attachment parenting is based on this very basic biological principle of the human animal, that we need that connection. And these crazy scientists that do these things that are unthinkable, they isolate a chimpanzee or an animal from its mother from birth, and they trust what's going to happen. It's not acceptable. Sorry? And study of orphans. So all of it. And so there's something now that's becoming very, very popular, and there are many people who want to put it into the diagnostic manual as a particular kind of emotional. I don't like to use the term mental illness, just like that horribly, because it's misunderstanding. An illness in the diagnostic manual we want to add to it, which is ACE, the ACE studies, adverse childhood experiences. And one of the most difficult adverse childhood experiences is the lack of connection. And so we develop, and this is old psychology. It's been around for a long time. Bowlby and his student, Ainsworth. We develop different methods of how we connect with people or don't connect with people. If we have secure connections from childhood, from the very beginning, it starts from birth. It starts from birth with the flood of oxytocin that takes place in the birth environment and the connection with the mother. It's the first thing the baby needs. So start to begin to develop a sense of safety and a place to go in the world. A place for finding safety in the world, the breast. And the holding, and the gaze, and the presence, and the sound, and the smell, and all that experience of the animal being felt, contained, and held. So with children, even now, recognizing that people have problematic children and difficulty, and if you don't, You know, the best children I've seen now over these many years of seeing children in all sorts of things is if the parents are grounded, intelligent enough, and can enable homeschooling where they're not subjected to the disturbances in the peers that they are likely to attach to instead of family. So when they leave the family attachment, they go to the peers because they don't have a strong connection with the parents, and all of that's organically the parents' boundaries and being is not transmitted by just being there. Discipline, the word discipline, what is the root of that word? Anyone? Disciple. To be a disciple. Sorry? To be a disciple, to follow, not by force or coercion. There's two kinds of force or coercion, positive and negative. I'm going to give you a star, you've done a good job. That's still coercion. If you get this done, you can do such and such. Positive reward, coercion. Now it sounds impossible at first hearing, maybe. How do I peaceful parent? How do I do this and allow what's present in the child to come forth naturally and organically, and yet draw clear the boundaries and make it clear? The only way we can do it successfully, apparently, and I've seen this, I've seen people who've gone through this attachment parenting from childhood, and children come out of schooling where but the problem with homeschooling is it seems difficult, seems impossible, and you can also help with activities, because the other thing, all of this is a basic principle. It's true for children, but it's really true even into adult. All misbehavior, and this gets back to a basic principle. This is a principle that Freud didn't ascribe to in his life, but at the end of his life, he said, I made a mistake. And the mistake that he made was he didn't believe that we were, in essence, by our nature, altruistic. We had naturally this inclination towards altruism and morality and goodness here and goodness in our being. All the things that happen there, effective, positive, and negative.
So what do you think is that alternative definition?
I'm sorry?
The alternative to homeschooling is, I mean, it's not realistic for everyone.
It's not realistic for everyone. But I would suggest just to examine if it can be, because a lot of people I know, they end up doing the products. I mean, I'm sorry, the products I've seen over these more than 30 years, children that come out of that, where they're at, what they do, and how the regulations. Saying sometimes it's difficult. Remember that Allah is generous in terms of healing things and circumstances that have gotten out of hand, and continuing to see what we need individually for our own development and healing, because we're all in a bad shape too. Well, what else? Some people are probably really well regulated. I know I've struggled through it from very difficult childhood and adverse childhood experiences I had. You know, and there's a film called Paper Tiger. Anybody know that film? Anybody know that film? Paper Tiger? Paper Tiger High School took these concepts. They said, okay, in this principle, this concept, connecting with one person. And I've done this many times. I will, because I understand what it means, and I can always be like that. And when they respond, they'll connect and they'll speak their connection. I have many young children. I came, they're like 7 or 8 years old. Session because they need, I need a session with that game right now. That uncle, I had an uncle that I connected to that I had. because I think he gave me so much. And anyway, there's a lot of stories I can tell about that. But, so, no, that's what I'm trying to talk about. So there's, sorry?
On the film, Paper Tiger.
Oh, Paper Tiger. Paper Tiger is about the school. And they said, well, we're going to exercise. So what they did is the most problematic children, one teacher would make the choice, I'm going to connect with this child. So it was like special attention, but really being there present. And this is something I want to say right now. Children demand sort of about how do children spell love. Has anyone heard that kind of cliche thing? How do children spell love? T-I-M-E. Time with. Time with. And, you know, I've seen parents who go through all the motions. Yeah, exchange. And we know this in terms of our own experience with adults. There are some adults that we know and we exchange and interact with, and some are very, very present, and some are truly. There was the famous scholar of Arabic. He had a sheikha. You know the story about his sheikha? His sheikha is a woman with a sheikh, and she said to him, "You're my best student because when you come, you bring your whole self," which is quite a statement, but it's something that we can reflect on. How do we become whole selves? You know, how many people come to me and in our sessions they finally say, you know, like I've lost myself in life. I remember when I was connected to myself, and now I've lost. And job, my healing is there. Find it. And there's a poem, this is a beautiful poem, by the way, that I often send out to my clients. And it's by this man, Derek Walcott, who's a Caribbean poet. You know him, Derek?
I saw him in Vancouver. I saw him in Vancouver, right?
Really? Really? I saw him in Santa Fe. He's passed away now. Last year.
What's his name again?
Derek Walcott. But his poem is basically, I'll just make it stuff really probably to summarize the poem. But he says basically something like, one day, with elation, you will greet yourself arriving at your own door. And you will greet the one that's been looking for you all these years. The ones you avoided for all these others and all these things. Invite yourself in. The one that has loved you all these years. Invite yourself. Take down the pictures from the walls and the notes. You know, all these ideas and all these things that we have about life and things. And welcome yourself in. Sit, take tea, and drink in life. Beautiful poem. It's a poem about meeting oneself and coming. My sheikh, he said that the sheikh job is to enable our midwife friend left, our president. Maybe I'll say this. Or I can repeat it. He said the job of the sheikh or the teacher is like the midwife. The midwife doesn't make the baby be born, you know, but he's there, the sheikh, for the student to be born. That's it. But the student has to be born. It has an independent, autonomous life that begins from that point of birth. So wholeness and health, integrity of all the parts of our being that take part in all things, and all things that take part in that wholeness of our being, that we experience at all levels. The gross, the subtle, the food, the experiences, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know, that wholeness of being, I forgot what I was going to say about that. Sorry, I do get a little bit scattered. Please bear with me. My I call somewhat poetic, because they could be. But I try to get the points out there. Yes.
So I'm asking because I have to leave like in 5 minutes.
Oh, sure.
If you can give us a list of practical things to do as parents and as mothers, as wives, what can we?
In 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, okay, let me see. Okay, first of all,
Okay.
and that's including women. Women are way ahead of it when it comes to all relationships. But that doesn't mean we have, in the modern times, with what's happening to our children, that doesn't mean we can manage. And if you don't get angry, there's probably something wrong with you. If you don't say, you must do this, and if they fight back, but remember this principle, that all acting out from children, I think I said this already, all acting out has at its root needs that are not being met from the very basic level as human mammals. So you hear what I'm saying? All acting out, all misbehavior, even in the adults. We have politicians. We have leaders of the country. Now, what they didn't get when they were 6 years old, they became 3-year-olds. So needs need to be met. Growth is a natural thing. What is one of the aspects of life? Is growth and discovery. For people who study, I mean, for any of you who have very small babies or maybe stages of development that are built into us by see them and our nature now, after many years, with these savvy adults that have gone through all the the slings and arrows and the batteredness of life that have caused us, for the most part in the modern era, to simply shut down. Fight, flight. At some point, we fight. And we look at the state of the world, the situation politically, the situation in terms of the environment, the situation in terms of education, the situation in terms of poverty, of social and emotional health and well-being. And you go on and on and on. If we look at all of that, it's daunting. It looks impossible. Like I said, my friend, he thought the most difficult part of recognizing what needs to be done for the environment and how to heal it is basically disabled, because when you start to look at it, it's overwhelming. We just back down. So that was 5 minutes of it. I got off sidetracked there. It's commentary on my and then is right that anything that needs to be said, anything that needs to be said can be said. That's a big thing to be said. Can be said by ourselves, to our spouse, to our children, and our children to us. And holding that principle, anything can be expressed, even anger can be expressed, and even anger can be expressed gently and appropriately. So we're talking a little bit about this pop song called The Sound of Silence. I don't know if anyone knows that. It's an old 60s song, great, beautiful meaning, poetic meaning, the sound of silence. We don't speak, we don't act. So anything can be said, and to believe that, and one of the keys in recognizing that that's the case, is we always have to hold to our compassion and in spirit of love, we can say whatever needs to be said. Now, caring is again when we live in an age of shutdown. We live in, one writer said, we always live in the dormant state, kind of sleep. And Sayyidina in the audio, he said, mankind is asleep, when he dies, he wakes up. So, and then some people added to it, they say, some of the Shio, they say, we gotta wake up now. And we can do that. But we've got to recognize, okay, is it worth my while? It's called being alive, choosing life or not. That's back to the shape that shapes the bear. I always say, I make jokes about this. It gets redundant, I'm sorry about that. Shakes a bear is like famous English shape. Do people know what shakes a bear? Someone says it. He said to be or not to be, that is there's no P and B, right? There's P. Takes a bear. And that's not what some scholars say. Yes, they believe that. But he said to be, I'm sorry? No, that's somebody who believed he was a Muslim. They have this whole kind of argument for it. Serious scholars suggest, said that's the case. You know, so anyway, that's another story. But he said, to be or not to be. And this process, I would suggest the essence of the spiritual path in a real way, not in a I mean, people say, "Oh, my spiritual life is this, my social life is." Yeah, one of the things that just totally impressed me about Islam when I became Muslim in 1969 was how all aspects of our being were included. Everything. There's a politics, there's a self, there's a social. Even to me, I repeat this to a lot of people don't understand how amazing it is to me that there was even guidance on how to use the toilet. You know, I mean, everything it's a whole, because Islam, the guidance recognizes as we take part in it. Everything we do takes part in who we are, what we are, from our innermost spiritualism, when a person said, to our outermost physical. You know, all of these things are relative to who we are, what we are as human beings in His creation. Yes. Read. I never got to the children. What do we do with the children? I had a dream one time. It sounded like this dream I remember because it was one of these vivid dreams. And in this dream, and this helped me connect with children. Children have very deep, great wisdom. They really have great wisdom that we have no access to. And the wisdom is, the source of that wisdom is their vitality and their purity. And little by little it begins to change. When it's very young, 5, 6, 7, 8, it's one quality to it. 10, 11, 12, 13, and they start coming into the world, and they discover the hypocrisy of the world. And then it continues. And to recognize that, and it's not that we go to them, well, I have this serious problem, you know, and you suggest them. But I mean, in fact, the reality is we could probably do that. But in this dream, it was this dream, and I was present in this room. It's like a big tent or something. And then there was a circle of children. They were all like 9, 10, 12. And it's called, and I knew it was the Council of Children. And they were sitting together and they were discussing how do we heal the world. And on the sidelines, there were shuyukh with turbans and robes. There was Native Americans with their headdress and regalia. There were other different people from different cultures. And these are the advisors that they were calling on to council. But they were making the decisions. And this is the reality because they are the ones who will determine the world to come and their world that they will go out in. But I also tell the story, and I'll tell it again, that one time I was in such spiritual despair that I reached out to the shuyukh. I got this great honor to be the Hakim for many of the spiritual teachers, the shuyukh across the planet, to be honest, for many years. And I reached it out to these people that I knew that were spiritual. They knew things. They were great. And I had this despair and difficulty myself. And I went to and each one I went to, I asked them for help and counsel. And for some reason, by Allah, what they had to say, it's not that I knew what they were saying, because I did. It's like, I'd heard this before. So it didn't go in and do anything. And I thought, well, Allah, guide me. And then one day the neighbor girl was 13 years old. She was there, we're just talking randomly, and she said to me something that seemed, we're just offhand statements, but in fact, what she said happened to me. Totally my confidence. She said, oh, and boom, it went right to my heart and opened me, with the skin thrills, and I changed, and it gave me ease. And so that time I referred, I think it was my 13-year-old Sheikha. And I've seen this over and over, and I gave some other examples. I gave some of them in the house. I was giving examples. I had a group of people in Australia, and the topic of the workshop was, the retreat was the art of living. And so I started the discussion, went around to maybe this number of people, something like this. What is living about? And everybody gave something that grows, it's born, and then got to this 8-year-old boy, and everybody's, and he says, the elements of life, and he says, death. Stop everything. So that purity and that innocence, not only can we respect it and protect it, but we can draw from it, and even by respecting and protecting it, you can actually learn from it. We can learn, and parents experience it and know that. And yes, we all get caught up in this thing, raising our voice and getting angry and then tuning back afterwards, et cetera, et cetera. But we can change that little by little. And the way we do it, I say to people, get down on the floor, or if they're small children, but just sit sometimes and just the same advice I give to someone has a mom, dad, and then listen to what they have to say. And listen in a way that you can tweak it, turn it into something. That's what we've been in our lives. We say, how am I doing? Well, blah, 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 blah. And then we come back and say, yeah, but, and we have this whole kind of intellectual, what do they call that? There's a popular sarcastic term. Mansplaining. Perfect. Yeah, we do this. So our time is up. I'm sorry?
Yeah, I think.
Because this thing, there's so much I didn't even begin to get into. Kind of section we talk about marriage, relationships.
Not really.
Oh, right.
Unless in the workshop,
Well, maybe it could be included in some of the other topics. Because there are some very good practical, I'm sorry that you
we could skip Sidi Hakim, we could skip the question and answer if you want to continue on it was, and whoever is late, they could just leave.
So we can have 30 more minutes as well.
Okay.
That'd be a great question.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
This is what they like to do.
this, about, as I said, their marriage is half of the team. For instance, it's 2/3 of the team. If that's the case, that's big stuff. I mean, we hear these things, but we don't necessarily act on it. We say, yeah, it's half the team. But we don't actually recognize what needs to make it that. How does it become strength? We learn from each other. Married couples come to me and they say, well, we realized that we're just so different. That means that you can have not a good marriage, but a great marriage. My teacher on this matter, he said, don't even try to have a good marriage. Shoot for a great marriage. That's what's going to happen. That's what it can be about. It's no accident that love set it up like this, where we get married and this other gender, this other being, this other sex is different than we are. And then we have these sort of classic differences of style of being, so that we men can learn from you, and you can learn from us. In terms of relationships, we need to learn from you. Because Allah designed it so women understand relationships very well. Couples have come to me for years, and I say to the man, he comes and I say, well, how's your marriage? Well, it's great. We have a really wonderful marriage. And then the wife comes, how's the marriage? Well, I'm not sure you can make it even one more day. I'm not exaggerating. And it says something about what we men are able to see and be aware of or just shut down. We have this great ability to selectively deny and encapsulate things that we should be putting aside in this little box. This experience. The same way the body insists something to protect it. It doesn't matter, we can go and function. We can still get things done, which is what we're trained to do. We're trained over and over to get things done, solve problems, get out there, be successful, do. So, the basic picture that we can look at is men need to learn to listen, and parents and central. And rather than when they tell on the scale of 1 to 10, I'm only a 2 or a 3, why? And then just simply listen. And this is what these two doctors came to me after the lecture in Canada and said, thank you so much, because we listened. And in listening, you don't say a word. You just listen. And I suggest, and one of the advices I give in all of these lectures, is pay attention to what takes place. Pay attention to what takes place in the body is the advice I give to everyone, and beginning homework for everyone. In other words, we have perception, neuroception, or interoception side of us in response to the world. The traditional old Hakim's the world, it always becomes written on blood, which circulates and then affects all of the things, and the building of the organs, etc., our being. And if our experience is a positive one, that's true. If it's negative one, that's true. If there's love in the exchange, then all sorts of other things happen, aside from the obvious perception, the most subtle perception that we have in our capabilities, in our being, very, very elaborate, very detailed perceptions. So, just to listen and to notice what takes place in the body. And with the children, so how are you doing? How am I doing this? What do you mean? How is it working? And then just listen. Well, you did, and rather than jumping in when they say something, well, no, but that's not true. I did this, I did this, I did that, I did this. And then, what do I notice in my body? And then, what else? What else about that? Draw it out, draw it out. And that's the kind of connection. And I tell you, to be heard, you know, one of the most important, my teachers, he said, there's 3 things we fear in life that are dramatic. The first one is being old, because the vulnerability comes with being old. It's a natural thing. We're one of the only mammals that the soft underbelly, as we say, is up and exposed. All of this sensitive part of our being. The animals on all 4s, they protect it, and they even protect it even more. So we have this unique thing. So he said the first fear is being open, because is reaching out, because rejected. In the modern studies, neuroscientists and neurological people, one of the most difficult things that happens to our system and our whole hormonal balance, our autonomic, our nervous system regulation is to feel rejected. We know this, right? Yeah, this is one of the most difficult things. And the fear of being rejected very often disables us simply reaching out, because, you know, or we have a difficulty in an exchange with someone in which we felt, you know, rejected, and so we say, we're not even talk to that person ever again. So we all know these things. So the courage it takes to reach out and to hopefully discover that this connection can still be made. The Prophet said, can I tell you something that's higher than prayer and fasting? Excuse me. Yes. The reconciliation of the essence, the value between people, between you and someone else, or between 2 people. And he saw us, and he even said it's acceptable to speak things that aren't completely true to someone if it will help bring that 2 people together. Like, you know, they really love you. I know you guys have 5-minute disagreement, but you know, they've said such good things about you. Very often you can find things that are true, just that maybe have been obvious. So the third thing he said that we fear is speaking out. And speaking out, we learn because, and what he said, and this is a deep understanding, when he said this, it was a deep understanding to me. He said that we fear speaking out from the fear of being destroyed. Because when we're not heard, when we speak, when we express ourselves, and it's not heard, it's not like we're speaking down a well. It's more like we don't exist. Women know this very often. Young children know this. Young girls know more than young boys. Teenage girls have, and boys to the girls, they have extraordinarily sensitive DS meters. Their pockets with better language. And you know how meters have, they have, the meter will boom, boom, they'll have a needle. Their needle is small when they face hypocrisy. And they've spent their life learning this, being told this is the way the world is, this is what it means to be a good person, and then they start going on the world, oh my God. Even my parents. And not only that, where do I find authenticity, genuine honesty? It's that entry into the terrible, this difficult world. But again, they need to begin to learn that they bring that. They bring that quality. And then to know that quality and to have that response means they have a knowledge and a wisdom that they then can carry with them and take to the world. Even if it's just a few people, and if it's more, that's good too. So, questions? I don't know. There's some more things I could say about marriage. The other thing, okay, let's say, the other thing that's important, my teacher said, one of the first things to get clear on marriage, it's not get married and live happily ever after. It is not. Duh. It is very good. But it's the natural harmony, conflict, and repair. And it's valuable to know that because you can develop strategy together we arrive at repair. And my wife and I have got to, sometimes we say, what about repair? For the one that's courageous is to say it's not standing stubbornly, I'm not going to open up to that person. We can go into more of that. I can slip it in some because very specific. Yeah.
I have a question actually to parents, but since you've been repeating it a lot, that we are human animals, comparing us to mammals, do you believe?
Not comparing. We are mammals.
So do you believe in evolution?
I believe in creation, and I don't get into that argument. But I took to be honest, teach science. But when I read studies and all of my research, I often will take, the argument for the evolutionary development of certain aspects of ourselves it has, because it's still a theory. I mean, I'm sorry for the scientific people here to say, well, no, it's not fact and law, it's not even physics. The theory of evolution still remains a theory, because there's some serious defects in the theory. Missing pieces. But in the long run, what's important is not even how it came about, but what is. Do you know what I mean? So, but and the value of recognizing that we are mammals and all the characteristics, and also more importantly, what I've not gotten into today, is how we've learned about recovering from trauma and developing the regulation of the self by the study of animals and nature. That's been one of the biggest things that has afforded this new understanding of dealing with trauma to do with the body and its natural physiological capabilities for recovery. And we don't force healing with medication or interface therapy, psychology, and how it's designed to overcome even a severe trauma and take place in trauma. Yeah.
You talked about the machine and everything to nature, basically.
Yes.
From all the chemicals and everything.
Yes.
Do you think that nature is being changed as well? So,
Well,
is
apparently,
it something?
it seems pretty apparent. I think that's pretty.
And I'm talking about human nature in the sense that we will all experience.
We adapt. We adapt. Part of our ability is resilience.
Yeah.
But again, at some point, we have to say, well, how much do I want to be resilient, and how much is what was never considered normal or part of our essential nature now by the modern world and the things. And so at some point we want to stand against it or stand with some wisdom in understanding and teaching that we can understand these things, so that we don't get so far off. But I suggest we're already so far. Collective trauma is something that I don't know of any writers. I mean, there's two people that talk the broad social, political, historical events. It's like the Luddites. People know the Luddites? Do you know the Luddites? If I were in England, it's a group of people that developed in the Industrial Revolution that were against the Industrial Revolution. And people say, well, they talk to me and say, well, you're just a Luddite, a Muslim Luddite. I said, no, I'm not a Luddite. But to look at the Luddites, they were people that many of them were exiled from the industrial parts of England. And they went to East Africa, many of them became Muslim. But aside from that, their criticism of the Industrial Revolution was not his jobs, which happened, which is still happened in terms of this whole ecological and industrial change. But they said they believed that the fabric of society would be rent. It would be disturbed and destroyed because of the machines. They somehow knew, had a sense, just the kind of biological intelligence about the involvement with them making and doing things. They would turn over to non-human, that would do something to the society. So yeah, I think it's changing. We adapt, but we don't adapt too much because we lose, and that's evidence.
This is the balance that we're striving to adapt again, and at the same time stay true to our beliefs and face the modern crazy world that we all live in. And also we all notice to our children. This session is all about parenting, in the sense that our children are in the midst of all this. We're not raising them.
I don't know. I would question whether those are racist. They're being influenced by it. And unfortunately, the sad thing is the influence is not. I mean, I do all of my work by Skype. Almost all of my individual work is by Skype. I use technology. I don't have a cell phone. I reduced that. I had one for a short time. I don't want this thing next to my brain, my head, my senses. I don't want that energy. I don't like the sound. I don't like doing it. But we have to really, we know, I mean, it's a big question. The incidence of anxiety, when I first started practicing, it was mostly, asthma, eczema, joint pain, physical problems. Now it's almost totally depression, anxiety, and more than anything, the new wave that's dramatic in the past 5 to 10 years, social anxiety. Social anxiety. And this is going like that with the incidence of, this is not social. Social media is not social. This is another subject matter, another session. But, and what happens, or what realizing trauma is what happens to us, and it's also what does not happen. So when we do not have the connection, physically, I say, when we don't have the bad breath of the other, that's to make an extreme point. When we don't have all the things that happen, our animal nature is bereft of something. And it begins to lose, it'll lose heart, it'll lose the sense of our humanity, and we'll lose the ability to care. And when we shut down and we dissociate because it's too overwhelming, we don't feel in the way to which we can feel, and we don't feel, we don't care, we don't.
We only have 1 minute.
1 minute.
Yeah, and close the session.
This is typically 1 minute.
When you were speaking, you have reminded a lot of things that happened recently here in Lebanon, and it's recently been a high tension level.
Yes.
And so a lot of people have been faced with sort of two decisions, not faced, but they face themselves with them, which is flee, flee the undercurrents that I'm not aware of, and ones that I'm aware of, which is what you were speaking about just a second ago, which is, how much do you adapt and how much do you safeguard sanity
versus staying and loving the connection, loving the human and social fabric, which it overseas.
May not be.
Choosing it sometimes over feeds or choosing with love, this
Yeah,
connection
I
with
hear you.
human,
I hear you.
the cellular level of feed. So it's a very kind of, I wonder, in one minute we're not going to cover this, but I just tried, just to put it out there as a question, in the air out there. Maybe talk about it later, but I just want to bring in this concept.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying. I didn't refer to that specifically because also I noticed part of the way we deal with these things is that we don't really call it repeating and dwell. We don't dwell on it. And that's a wisdom. That's a natural wisdom to learn. But even when we don't dwell on things that are problematic, they run as I'm saying earlier, there's an undercurrent that runs and particularly affects our survival level. And that, when that's interrupted, it can affect and dysfunction the regulation of all these other things that take place. And one of the medicines that we know and that we automatically comes forth from us by Allah's rahmah is expressing love and connection and feeding up with each other, even if we don't refer and go through these things and dwell on them. I think that's someone who said. And that's what I felt when I came. I came into the airport and I thought, okay, I can do this. This is a place where love exists. So I know it sounds really cheesy, but cheese is one of my favorite things.
Oh yeah, so we end where we started.
Yes, that's it. Okay. Thank you all for listening. I hope it was useful what I have to say. Because there's so much, and like I say, this issue of children, Allah help us. And Allah help our children. Allah help us. Allah help our children. And the thing about the Council of Children I didn't say is I suggest that we give as much responsibility for understanding the dilemma, but they come with solutions too. Even that they begin considering at a young age, so when they reach more active. I know situations in young people who are 9, 10, 11 years old that are activists. There's one Native American kid from one of the Native American communities, and he gets up and lectures. He's like 13 or 14 now. He gets some lectures to audiences, and they're like, wow. He's moving. And what he has to say is true. So, inshallah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sidi Hakim, and thank you all for joining us this morning. Please have some snacks, and coffee is good already. We're famous, we're known for our hazelnut coffee in the Makan. So this is the coffee we have for today, and some sweets. Thank you. Please, thank you. Thank you, Sidi Hakim.
That's such a short time.
Yeah.